everyone, this is Mrs. Baker, and I'm talking to you today about Canterbury Tales. So get ready for our trip to Canterbury Cathedral and going over the prologue to Chaucer's poem. Okay, so we're going to go over the first part of the prologue here, and make sure you have your papers ready to go, and make sure that you are checking your answers and writing down what I have written. Okay, so remember, when we're reading poetry, you always want to refer to line numbers are helpful, and you always want to use punctuation marks and as a way to chunk up the text. So we have the first 4 lines here end in a semicolon. That's going to take 1 chunk. The next 4 lines go all the way down to actually, it's more than 4. I can't count. We go all the way down to like line 12 here. And that takes us to a period at the end of 11, 12, 13, 14, line 14. Okay? So by using our punctuation marks, it will help us to chunk up this text. Also, if you notice word choices for the beginning of a sentence, no matter how complex the wording is, Chaucer is writing in complete sentences. So proper grammar is still going to apply here. So we notice when he starts off with when, and he gives us a description. Then when, another description. Then people go do this thing. Okay? So if you use those key words and help to chunk it up, it will all make sense. So the first beginning of our poem here, the first 4 lines, pretty much all Chaucer is saying is that April showers will bring May flowers. When April with his shower sweet with fruit, the drought of March has pierced unto the root, and bathed each vein with liquor that has power to generate therein and sire the flower. So pretty much it's our age-old story, our little line at springtime, April showers bring May flowers. Then we have Zephyr in line 5, and this comes from Greek mythology. Zephyr is the west wind. Now, if you think about the west wind in summertime here, the west wind brings the bugs, but it also brings really warm air. So when Zephyr blows in springtime, that's actually a good thing because it's going to warm up the area, and that's good. We also have an allusion here to Ram. We're talking about Aries. This has to do with astrology, so this is another clue that it's springtime. So when these things occur, when the west wind blows, when April has brought May flowers, and it is springtime according to astrology, then folks go on pilgrimage. And palmers, people who pray, seek out strange strands. And if you notice, woo, look at all that alliteration. We have strange strands. I can highlight here. We have quite a bit of alliteration there. Okay, so this translation into modern English is doing a pretty good job of trying to bring in some of these poetic effects. Okay, so people like to go out during springtime, of course, because who wants to travel in winter? It's not fun. So this is all about cabin fever. They're getting over it. Okay, we have the definition of the word martyr, someone who dies for their faith, and this is talking about Sir Thomas à Becket, who was killed by King Henry II and martyred for his actions. So no different than the shrines that we see on the side of a highway, or traveling to go to a place where someone has passed. That's what this is. Folks are going on this pilgrimage to Canterbury Cathedral, to the resting place of Sir Thomas à Becket. That gives him a reason for a trip, okay, because that's where he's buried. All right, so we're starting at Southwark at the Tabard Inn, and as I lay, so we know we have a narrator who's giving us this whole big picture, and then they are 29 people going to Canterbury. And again, use those punctuation marks. We have that period right there, which is really helpful. Okay, now our narrator is a popular guy. He's someone who is an extrovert, and he speaks with every single person, and they all make the agreement to travel together because there's safety in numbers, and that they leave tomorrow morning to go to Canterbury. Okay, So now our narrator is going to speak to us and tell us about each one of these people, give us his impressions of them, what is their rank, how are they displayed, what are they wearing. And the first person that he begins with is the knight. And the knight, remember here, this is talking about feudalism, that hierarchy, that structure of society. And the knight is towards the top of that middle class. You have, God and king are at the very high end of the echelon, and then you have the knights, then you have the peasants and people down towards the bottom. So our knight is a worthy man. He's very trustworthy, honorable. He's very courteous. He has fought for the betterment of society, for Christianity in the Crusades, and he's been to all sorts of places. We have a big laundry list of the various places he has been, and he has fought in 15 battles. What's the narrator's impression of the knight? Well, it's very favorable. He is praised here and talked about how worthy he is and how selfless he is, working for the benefit of others. Now, we have the description of the clothing. It says he bore himself as meekly as a maid, that he is modest, also in his type of clothing, his array, that he was very plain clothing. He's not very gay. Now, we're not talking about homosexuality here. We're talking about fashion. He's not being very bright and happy kind of colors. He, is dressed in browns, and, he's more about what he wears. It's not about what he wears. It's more about the deeds that he does. Okay? All right. So now with the knight, we have the youthful squire, who is a lusty lover and bachelor, okay? And this is the knight's son. So we have a big contrast here between the knight and his son. The knight is, again, very modest, not worried about fashion, whereas the squire is worried about fashion. He likes to impress the ladies with his art. He's 20 years old. He's ridden sometime with the cavalry in Flanders and Artois and Picardy. So he has traveled a little bit, but obviously not as much as his father. And why does he travel and what does he work for? It's to win his lady's grace. So he is definitely a ladies' man. Okay? And there's a big, huge contrast between him and his father. How is he a ladies' man? Well, he always has fresh cut flowers. He's always singing or fluting all day. So he's definitely someone who wants to impress the girls with his deeds. And it seems that he's rather successful, because he tells us, the narrator says that he slept no more than does a nightingale. Nightingales don't sleep. They're birds that are nocturnal, and they sing only at night. So therefore, you put two and two together. Our squire likes to stay up late with the ladies. He's also a rather artsy guy. He makes up songs, he jousts, he can dance too, sketch and write. So not only is he a fighter, he's a lover. Actually, he's more of a lover than he is a fighter. Okay? Now, with him, we have the yeoman, and the yeoman is the servant of the knight, because the squire probably wouldn't have his own. The squire wouldn't have his own servant. So the he that we're referring to in line 101 has to do with the knight. Okay? Now, our knight is dressed a bit like Robin Hood, clad in coat and hood of green, a sheaf of peacock feathers. He's a bit of, he's a bowsman, so one who wears, who's an archer. He has a bow and a sheath of arrows. And he also has with him a sword, a buckler, and a dagger. He seems well in tuned with, well equipped, I should say, for all of this. A true forester he was, I guess. Now, this is a little bit of, we can start to pick up on the tone from our narrator. That, a bit of sarcasm here, because the yeoman, why would our narrator put I guess on the end of it? It's because he's saying like, okay, well, this guy is a bit of a wimp. He's overly prepared with weapons for the outdoors. Okay? Now, these three, the knight, the squire, and the yeoman, all represent feudalism in society. And again, keep in mind, Chaucer is critiquing society in this story. So not all is just a straightforward observation. Okay, our next group, we have now getting into religion and the church. We have a nun, a prioress. So she's not just any old nun, she's a nun with authority. And her name is Madame Elglatine. Okay, she can speak French fluently, but she doesn't know it from the streets. She learned it from school. So she is well educated, but she's going to be prim and proper. Okay, and now we really get to pick up on Chaucer and his opinion of the nun, because notice what he's focusing on. He's not talking about her description of the charity work that she does and the praying that she does. No, look at all of this. He spends almost 10 lines talking about her eating habits and, in great detail of what she's like, eating. Okay. And there seems to be a bit of mockery with this. Talks about how, she's so mannerly and polite, and then she has her little dogs too. But it's like, well, wait a second. If this is supposed to be a nun and she's supposed to be charitable, why aren't we getting a description of that? So this is supposed to tell us she's not very charitable. Okay, she's generous and well-to-do and rich, but it kind of makes us wonder, like, is her concern for others false? Because really, it talks all about like her little dogs, that she took care of them, and she'd weep if one of them were dead. Yeah, okay, lady, her and her little dogs too. And then we also get a little bit of the description of her wearing her wimple. A wimple is the head covering that nuns wear. Okay, so we don't get to see what her hair is like, but we do get to see her fair forehead and her broad brow, which is kind of saying that she's smart and intelligent. But again, it's also kind of making fun of her too, like in her appearance. Now, she's neat and clean. She also has with her cloak a string of beads, which could be a rosary. And then we also have a brooch. So a brooch is a pin of gold, and on it is the big letter A, and then under it is Amor vincit omnia, which translation is love conquers all. So you could take this as, and it seems kind of odd that a nun would have a pin that says love conquers all. Is she talking about romantic love conquering all? Or is she talking about, God's love is conquering all? Now, with the nun, she also had a little nun with her, who was her chaplain, like her servant, and then she also had 3 priests with her. Okay, so we have a total of 4 people accompanying the nun. With also, next, is the monk, who's an outrider. He is a missionary. He travels around. We have lots of examples out of onomatopoeia here. He is also one who, like the nun, kind of breaks our expectations. We would think of a monk as very pious and holy and quiet and in his cloistered area. But here, our monk doesn't follow rules and traditions. He thinks that monks should be allowed out to go hunt and to experience life, so not be stuck in a cloister. There's actually a place in New York where you could go visit the cloisters, and it was a place for, and it probably still is a place for nuns and monks and priests. So what does he think about studying books? He doesn't like them. But our monk, he is also a bit gluttonous and lazy. He doesn't think that he should have to go out and work for his living. And he prefers to, take what he can get. All right. So to continue with this, we have our friar is going to be next, and you'll have to join me in the next video to get that information.